it some thought, and work on it. It's really cool to see that kind of stuff. It's where a lot of creativity comes from. It helps with like personal player burnout and whatnot. So that's something to keep in mind. So when you're also making your character, think about all the little details of your character. What are their mannerisms? How do they speak? Do they have an accent? Are they timid? Are they loud? Are they obnoxious? What do they like? What do they dislike? Where's their fashion sense? What are their values? What defines them? What are their character traits? Are they prideful? Are they kind? Are they mean? Are they kind of standoffish? Are they charismatic? Are they confident? Or are they just straight cutthroat? Do they have any talents or hobbies, professions? Like are they a musician? Are they like a DJ? Are they a gamer? Are they a chef? Etc. Etc. A bounty hunter? You name it. The sky's the limit. Really let your creativity flow and add to it. Uh, if you're new to RP, don't worry so much about hashing out all those details of your character. Many find it easier to RP as a loose extension of themselves to help stay in character, especially for their first time. And by first time, I mean like their first season. One quote from Deke is he said, "I always focus more on story arc than character traits. All my avatars end up being some version of me, so finding and staying in character is not hard. I mostly text RP too, so accent and voice effects are much less important." It's really good advice especially if it's, your first time, or if you're the type of person who's just like, oh man, trying to keep up all this like really bogs me down. And I don't want to have to like do this the entire time, or it's just a lot for you. That's something to consider. A lot of good feedback right there. Just do text if you have to, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, moving on. All right, embracing your inner storyteller. So I'm really going to dive into this one. I really, really passionate about this part. So to help develop a story for your character, I would challenge each of you to find ways to make it as unique to you as possible. Do this by thinking of ways of telling a story that not just anyone could tell, or rather only you could tell it that way. Maybe it'll be similar to other stories, but this one is unique because it has your personal touch to it. Find things that you are passionate about or things that interest, excite, or inspire you, and tell a story around it. It can be as simple as a story of a person who just loves serving ice cream to something as complex as an ex corporate CEO trying to rebuild an industry. Though I will preface, don't steal the ice cream one. My idea, no. I'm telling that one later. What is one thing that is most important when telling these stories is that you bring your own flavor to it. It could be a story about values, or a coming of age story, or a story about innocence. It could be about a soldier, a warrior, or someone on a spiritual journey. Get creative again. Whatever story you have to tell, make it one that you feel invested in, and that is personal to you, that you want to express. With all that being said, keep it tasteful. You can include serious RP. You can include tragedy as part of your character story or background, but don't add things just for shock value. Make sure it's organic. Make sure it's purposeful for their story and the character in general. Don't include anything that's going to break server rules. And to give you guys a great example of this is I was working on a character story recently, and it gets a little touchy, and there's be a couple layers to this. So full disclosure, it included some racism in the story. Okay, but it wasn't like my character being racist or anything, and I kept try to keep it tasteful. That knowing I'm sure none of us agree with racism, it's against our server rules. The racist in the story were the antagonist. Um, do not make your character a racist, okay? Don't try to be something edgy and be like, oh, well, it's a part of their story. Like, and that's what I mean. You have to find the balance. You can add certain things into your story, but you can't, there's a line, and you need to find that balance. You need to find that line of, well, okay, where is this okay? Where would it not be okay? And if you're not certain, then open a ticket. RP ticket. Ask us, hey, I have this idea for my character story. Would this be okay? Is it too much? It's a, and that's what I did with my fellow staff here. They all kind of read through it and they're like, yeah, okay, like, yeah, this is a little bit intense, but it's okay. It doesn't break any server rules. Blah blah blah.
If I
Uh,
can chime in just really quickly, it's really
yes.
about when it comes to sensitive topics, the key is not to glorify the topic at hand, it is to demonstrate how it contributes to that particular character's values or experiences. How did those experiences affect that character? How did they push them in a particular direction or impact their sort of greater story?
Exactly. And I'm gonna dive deeper into that. So the reason why I had included racism in the story of my character that I was just talking about is because the whole his whole shtick was going to be that some really horrible things had happened, and he had kind of always dealt with like being an outcast, and he was an outcast because of like the color of his skin, for example. Blah 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 blah. Anyways, he was not very social, but uh, as he grew up, and he had to deal with various things, um, he kind of got attached to people. Like he joined the military at one point, and so he got attached to his fellow soldiers, and they were the only ones that treated him with decency. No one else had treated him with decency before that because everyone was kind of like racist. uh, so that was kind of like the thing for him is he held on to those guys, and it was very much a part of his character, and it was going to be a part of his lore as well. Of he saw a brotherhood, and he valued others' lives. He cherished those people. Um, anyways, so that's the thing is like make it a part of that character. Don't just do it. Anyways, sorry, that was a bit of a ramble.
Good ramble.
Um, Before I will quickly, because we've gone through a few slides now, does anyone want to raise their hand? Does anyone want to add anything to that? All right, I'm gonna keep on rocking and rolling. Okay, so this is gets into some important stuff. You, we all need to stay in character, be the character, live the character. You need to interact with the world as your character would. And perspective is the most important thing, a part of that. You are living in the perspective of your character, not yourself. You need to be mindful that although killing someone in a game to you means nothing, to your character it should mean something because they live in this world. Okay, we've seen a lot of stuff, especially recently, especially yesterday, where people were very flippant about death and killing and just disregarding human life. That shouldn't be so nonchalant and casual. Um, so when you're building and developing your character in their story, keep in mind also that they only know information that they themselves have been exposed to. We've had issues with that a little bit this season. If they were not there, how do they know that information? Did they get it from someone else? How did they hear of it? Learning of X event or any kind of information out of character does not mean your character now knows it in character. That's not how that works. Your character has to experience it or be exposed to it in some way. Lastly, react to situations as your character would, not as you would, and do not take RPs personally. I need to emphasize that. Now, there's a lot of layers to that. I get it. Sometimes we're in this situation and we really don't like it. You can set your boundaries, set your lines. Uh, if you're uncomfortable with something, then like make it known that you're uncomfortable and you can try to leave the situation. Okay, but don't get upset over RP. Again, we're all here for the experience. We're not trying to, have a bad time. So, to that effect, would anyone else like to chime in? Mo, would you have anything to add on to that? All that?
I think Grace slash Mox has something like to add, so I'm going to invite them up to the stage.
Hmm hmm
Hello. Okay, so For this one in particular, I think that if you want any of your journal information to be shared or have somebody learn it ICly, there is some wonderful tools that we have at player disposal. One thing, for instance, I personally use is I will take scraps of paper or journals and I will write, some explanation of if you find this thing, you have access to my character's journal for XYZ entry. It is a great way for people to interact and gain more insight into a character's general mindset or anything going on in their life. It also helps, again, make the world feel lived in. And it keeps everything completely icy.
That's awesome. That's actually really, really good idea. I love that.
Yeah, something I'll add too is like a lot of RP is improv, and it's not about just coming up with the best or wittiest way to end an interaction or to inject your character into that particular stage. Like sometimes you got to, if you're in a room full of people and you see some really great RP going on, you don't necessarily need to become the focus of it or make yourself the focus of it. Sometimes being a background actor or a background character that just nods or sighs or throws in an expletive at the right time can have just as much impact as two people that are talking. So I always recommend to like read the room a little bit. What is going on? Does it make sense for you to interject whatever it is that you want to? Or do you want to let the other people in the room essentially have the spotlight?
There is also, on that point, there's a difference between trying to force an interaction and opening a door and asking if you can become part of something, because more often than not, if you're trying for something serious and your character walks in on, say, my character's been shot, I'm dealing with aggression against other people in my group. If you open the door and say, kind of give some type of indication that your character's there, that you want to interact, more often than not, people aren't gonna story keep from you. It just depends on what exactly you're trying to do. Trying to bombard your way in, take over the spotlight, make the focal point you, does in fact leave a sour taste in people's mouths. So it's very important distinction to be like, do I want to be a part of the memory or do I want to be the focus of the memory? Is a very important distinction.
Yeah, that's great. Uh, all right.
And then, if I may, just very quickly, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to type fast enough for that last slide.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
No, 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 you're good. Something I think is very important. Again, I'm going to kind of slightly backtrack and touch on that. If there are, and I will use myself as an example because I can only go by best example. My character is suffering from DID in character, and I do not personally have DID. I do have other mental illnesses that I do my best to portray for my own character. But if you ever want to portray something, nobody is telling you you cannot portray something. Just be respectful, do your due diligence. Don't just say you understand something at surface level because you've seen some variation of media. I just think that is extremely, extremely important because I've worked with people that do in fact have DID, and I have constantly gone back to them for feedback, like, "Hey, am I doing this correctly? Is there anything I need to improve upon?" Because I believe that these things should be represented, as long as they're done so with respect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great. And to touch on that even more, um, it goes back to like keeping it tasteful, right? And if you want to RP, like here's a good example. So that character that I was talking about earlier, they were going to be, like a Japanese descended character. They were mixed race. They were like half black, half Japanese. Now, just because my character's Japanese does not mean I'm about to go start making accents. Okay, like that's disrespectful. It's distasteful. No one wants that. You're gonna leave a bad taste in everyone else's mouth. Like, just don't. Like, for God's sake, please don't. Another thing to consider with all this, if you're barging your way into situations and scenes that people are having, if you're not like doing your due diligence and just being a good faith RPer, it's very likely that people are not going to want to interact with you. You know, you're probably, and I've seen it happen, where you're going to enter the room and that room's going to empty out. Okay? Like, people are not going to want to be around you. So do yourself a favor as well, and stay respectful. Keep your RP tasteful. Keep it good. They're genuine. Just in good faith.
Yeah,
Anyways,
and in that same vein as well, like if there's something that you want to explore, but you're not quite sure, and you're not quite, I mean, like you kind of have to be able to put yourself out there and be like, hey, I have some ideas of things I want to play. I don't really know where to start. Does anybody have resources? Because I guarantee you there's always somebody that does. And if not, I personally am more than happy to do research because I do research for all sorts of things because I find them entertaining. So, just things to keep in mind.
yeah, no, that also brings up a good point. If you need help, ask for help. Like with something, if you don't understand it, and you've tried researching it and you're still not like getting it, or you just want more inspiration for it, seek out others. Ask for opinions. We're a community. I know plenty of folks that are happy to help others with their RP or answer questions or do whatever they can to make sure that you're having the best time that you can have, so that everyone else can as well.
Exactly. Um, Let me just quickly catch up on something here in the side chat. Um, while I can understand the concept there, I mean, even in my own in part of Grace's deleted lore, there was a spoiler warning for an attempt of self harm. I feel it can be a good background tool. Part of the problem is you have to understand that if you're doing that, it is an incredibly sensitive topic, and you have to understand and play it with the correct amount of gravitas, because if you don't, it's gonna come off really bitter no matter which way you do it, and people will in fact avoid you for that type of thing. I myself would be included because it is a topic that is extremely prevalent on my everyday life. So while I would never discourage somebody from trying to explore that, there is ways we have already tried to do that in a positive light. For instance, the florist's funeral, funerals, and talking about people and commemorating their life is a much more easy avenue to navigate. But if you really, really wanna take that leap, I'd be. I will only speak for myself personally. I, as staff, would be happy to navigate that with you to try to find a solution that you are happy with,
Yep.
Hyphen.
I'll interject as well a little bit here. So, I mean, in terms to address what Hyphen is talking about, death, like death does not have to be from a gunshot or drinking bleach or whatever. I remember probably the most like prolific, not prolific is the wrong word, poignant PARP experience I ever had. For people who've been around for a long time, they may remember a character back in the day named Miss B. Miss B was an old lady who was very lovely and had a lot of southern charm. And I remember one day Miss B in character took me we were at the Garden of Bones by the lake there, and she sat me down and she told me that she was dying and that she had cancer. And I essentially, like, I knew that there was this sort of like clock, like counting down in the back of my head that eventually this was going to happen. And then one day, we got the call over the radio. Miss B says something to the effect of like, "Hey guys, I think it's time for that movie night now." And we all got together and we all watched like some in character in game movie together. And Miss B basically kind of yodered out of existence and just died. It was a particularly powerful experience for all people involved. I think everyone who was in the room like quickly did an out of character saying like I'm literally crying right now. Like it was a very, very powerful difficult but incredibly like satisfying role play moment for me, and has kind of set like the bedrock in terms of like what is that god tier way of leveraging a character's death in order to for sort of facilitate a story, because it's not necessarily just about you all the time. It's about the ripple that you leave behind in other people, and sort of dropping that stone in the pond and watching those waves that you make move those around you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Um, that's another thing to really get into when it comes to like embracing your inner storyteller and just storytelling in general. It's like not everything always has to be again like crazy pew pew pow pow or shock value things, you know. Sometimes the most subtle things, like just subtle moments, it's huge. It's like it can make an extreme impact like that. So it's just one thing to consider when you're trying to tell a story is you can make something impactful without making it crazy.
Less is more
What
uh,
what is
sometimes.
it what is it you're
yes.
wanting to comment about, Ivan?
While Hyphen types that up, one thing I'll also say, I want to go back to real quick because I almost forgot one of my notes I wanted to touch on, which is where was it? Actually, I think it was in embracing. Yeah, yeah, it was back to this. So like I was saying, you when you're telling your story, you want to try and keep it, unique to you, and there's all sorts of ways to do that. One kind of this is kind of a funny analogy that I'm going to make here, but one way to think of it is like take musical artists for example, right? Some of the best musical artists are well known because they have a very developed, unique style. Like for example, not just anybody could rap the same way as like Eminem does, right? Like yeah, you showing my age a little bit, but when you hear an Eminem some song come on, you're like, oh yeah, that's Eminem. Like there's no doubt in your mind. Um, so that's one of those things. It's like when I say write it in a way that only you could do it, that's what I mean. It's like it has your personal brand on it. It has your personal touch to it. Um, and you could do that in all kinds of ways. Again, I mean that it goes back to finding things that interest you, that excite you, that inspire you, and just telling a story around it. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It can be small. It can be about values. If one of your things is like you really value like a personal journey or personal development, you could make your character easily make a whole story around that. You can make a whole story around fucking ice cream. All right, like uh, I love ice cream. That's why I'm using that. That's why my name is Chilled Cone. That's right. So one of these seasons, when you find me in character as the ice cream man, you'll know I'm having a good time. Okay, Hyphen says, I was going to circle back to trauma and how that once a villain dies, a community has to recover. The best example I've seen so far is a personal one from season 10, in which Lucian Whitlock died. While it gave closure, it left a lingering anxiety and tension within the community. People had PTSD from this man, people had to adjust to living normally again. I think that your villain is good once you can give that feeling of closure, but anxiety relief, but what now? Yeah, that's pretty. I'd say that's pretty fair. It's pretty well stated. But yeah, I mean, death can absolutely be a powerful story mechanic. Um, Again, just when you're anytime you're thinking about death and anything really, but make sure it's organic. Make sure it feels natural. Don't force it. That's for any story element really, but especially when it comes to like death, right? If you want it to feel impactful, it needs to feel natural. All right,
Also,
moving on. Okay, go
yeah,
ahead.
as we move on, something I want to point out is that there needs to be a general understanding across the board. Each season, you should treat each individual season as just that season. Don't when you start to try to force yourself to compare to the quote quote seasons of old, the seasons of great, of this is what the standard should be, you start to kind of set yourself up for failure in whatever season you're currently in. You as players, we as staff, make the season what it is. If we want a season to be good, then we need to work together to do so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like to go on that further, using, we all have our beloved moments of past seasons, and you can use those to inspire you, but definitely I would say don't try to recreate it, right? Like that's no good for anybody.
If I can, yeah, it's something I've always tried to encourage people to do as well, and something that will actually benefit your RP significantly is previous seasons. Like, what typically happens is people play in a particular group at the beginning of the season. A lot of people group up ahead of time. They meet new people throughout the season. That particular group grows. You can look at like examples like like the TMR, BDE, all these other things. And then when season 12 eventually rolls along, what I typically see is these groups of players all say, okay, what are we all now doing for next season? I would personally challenge anyone who's here to get out of your groups. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but by leaving your established groups of people and putting yourself back into the world and just being a singular person and exploring that world can result in so much higher tier roleplay than everyone coming up with a big plan and this is going to be our faction and we're going to do this, that, the other. Like, I'm not saying that's not for everybody. But if you really want to take your RP to the next level, break out of your comfort zone. Stop playing with the same people that you play with. You can definitely link up with them halfway through the season, but having a little bit of a fresher take sometimes really starts with you leaving your comfort zone. And I encourage people, as scary as it can be sometimes, to do that. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Yeah, it really, I really like, on that note, it really encourages someone to develop like as an RPer. Yeah, I love that. Um, One of the things I want to talk about too with staying in character and living in the world and interacting with the world, because I don't see a better time to bring this up. One of the things I want to talk about, again, when I was discussing earlier about, you know, death should mean something to your character. Killing somebody in a game is one thing to you, but it should mean something to your character, so don't take it lightly. One thing I want to get on the topic of is one of the examples I'm going to use, and yeah, staff, like, hold me back, or chime in if you feel like I'm off base here. But um, when you're in a situation, and I'm going to directly use yesterday as an example. Fuck it. Uh, when you're in an RP situation, uh, and there's like 40 other people, yes, it gets hectic. Yes, it gets crazy. That does not mean that everyone has to lose their mind. So one of the things I want to talk about is like, you shouldn't. I mean, character autonomy is important. I believe that, but one thing I didn't like from yesterday, and I think it pertains to this subject, is that when Zarkov died, right? People essentially charged the room and just murdered him. They didn't give him a chance to speak. There wasn't any real RP. He just kind of charged the room and blew his head off. Uh, I think I think we have to do better with that as a community, for a lot of reasons. Uh, and like, if you want to make the argument, right, that oh well, we had a lot of reason to kill him, whatever, that's fine. Uh, RP that then, like, because let me tell you, if I was in that room as one of the characters, like, as if I was as Shakur, and like, he was just killed before I was able to get information out of him, I would be really fucking pissed. I'd be stringing up whoever shot him, because that was a potential bountiful source of information of trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think that for those who were there for that event, like what do you think you guys lost as a result of just running in and killing this person? Like, what if there was information to be gleaned and that literally just got shot and now all that information is lost to time? So those are things that you have to really take into consideration when you're approaching a situation. Is like, how do I actually, you know, like how do I separate what I would do or whatever from what my character would do, and what actually is going to result in better RP? What's going to move the story along further? What's going to bring more details to the forefront? So like yeah, if you're just going to run into a area and kill the antagonist, sure, that'll happen, but you might miss out on some stuff.
Um, what I would encourage also is like this goes again back to being in character, right? If if you're if you're the type of character that is gonna run and charge him and whatever, fine, and like just kill him right away. Be ready to deal with the consequences of that. And like again, personally, if I was there in character, you would have had consequences because my character would have been pissed, and
If Grace
rightfully
had been
so.
there in character, there would have been the greatest like mom shame speech to all of you. Like flat out. I was honestly really disappointed in if I had been there in character.
Yeah,
And y'all would have fucking known about it. So,
yeah,
just something
like
to consider.
yeah.
I would just like to dial back really quickly to the comments on uh, how characters can react to death, because it's more than just the initial moment of, oh, you've killed somebody or you've witnessed somebody die. Tying back into character creation, that's something that you can ask yourself is, has my character ever witnessed somebody die? Has my character ever been actively involved in killing somebody? Because that can also influence how they react in that scenario, too.
Mm, very nice. Yeah. Gonna quote Kodad here because I think he raised a good point just now, saying try to exercise all of your dialogue options before going straight to shooty shooty bang bang. Like absolutely right. Like okay, you want to kill him? Okay, fine. You know, you'll have your chance to kill the villain, the big bad. You know, but you know maybe try to like hold off on doing it the moment you see him. You know, glean some information, get that dialogue, get the RP. You know, that's what we're here for. This is an RP server. It's not a light story and PvP server.
I think what it comes down to is the quality, right? You guys can either do like like low tier quality RP where it's just like go in, shoot the bad guy, wow, wow, I really hate this guy, or you can really try to turn the situation into something that's a lot more dynamic, interesting, and where more like information, emotions, or whatever would bear out. And
Yeah,
it is really another thing to take into consideration too is it's very easy to get caught up in like kind of a mob mentality when everyone is super excited about something, when tensions are high, you know, after a big battle. There's you know there's just like you're either going to get shallow or maybe like low quality or high quality is actually the completely wrong way to phrase it. What I will rephrase it as is you can have shallow RP or you can have deep RP. You get to choose what that is. But the way I think what Child is trying to say is the way that the Zarkov was approached results in shallow RP. Cool, he's
yeah,
dead. Now what? Okay, there's some files on the computer. Great. But what could we have gotten out of a conversation with Zarkov? So, just something to think about.
yeah. All right. Let me see what Hardrada said real quick. Oh, yeah. Hardrada makes a pretty good point. One thing to keep in mind is these kinds of events. You also need to let other players get their chance at RP to shine. You know, let them get their own chance to play. In short, think of your fellow players and not just your own gut instinct to shoot BB in face. BBEG. I don't know. I'm sorry, Hardrada. I don't know that one. But yes, he raises a good point. You know, it's not just your RP that you're sacrificing; it's everyone that is there. You know, you just made them all suffer because of that. That's like such a bummer, man. Anyways, all right, we'll keep going. We'll continue on because we're getting a little caught up here. We can circle back to it at the end if more people want to chime in on that, but let's start moving on. All right, so we're gonna get into some like mechanics of of things. So one thing I've seen pretty decently throughout this season is character events, or just player events in general. And so I want to kind of touch on that and like give you guys kind of like a general guidelines. And some of this stuff is like guidelines we as staff have kind of come up with for ourselves. And I thought it would be kind of cool to pass it along to you guys. So here's some of it. I kind of re-edited it a little bit to make it more digestible for the player base. Anyways, so when you're thinking about setting up an event as a player, uh, some things to consider. You know, the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Right. So, who is the intended audience of the event? Is it a specific faction, a specific town, for everyone in the server? Personally, we prefer things to be for everyone in the server, but autonomy, RP autonomy. You know, you get to choose that. Anyways, who is needed during the event? Like, will staff be needed to perform something extra? You know, if you want that, just cut a ticket. Keep in mind, you know, again, staff, we love working with players. We love doing, executing things with you guys and helping you do live out your vision and whatnot. So if you really want to amp an event up and you want to see if staff can help with that, again, cut a ticket. That's what we're here for. Anyways, what is needed? You know, what is needed before, during, and after the event? Is there going to be items, gear? Does something need to be built? You know, are vehicles going to be needed? Or is food going to be needed? Food is usually almost needed. You know, if you're having players come, you know, they gotta eat. Another thing to consider is like cleanup. You know, personally, I've seen it worse in past seasons, but I'm just gonna put this out there. Please clean up after yourselves. You know, especially after an event. Of course, staff, like, you know, we try to do our best, but uh, don't leave a place a complete pigsty. You know, unless that's your character. Cough cough. Certain X person who we all know and love. Anyways, another thing is, what do participants need to know for the event? You know, what type of event is it? Will PvP be allowed? Do they need information to preface the event? Which, you know, usually always, but what kind of information? um, like, where's the event located? Another thing is, why? You know, why are you running this event? You know, if it's for lore, why does it make narrative sense right now? Like, did something just happen and it's procking this event, right? Like, that's something to think and consider. It'd be very cool to see some more stuff like that, some more events that just are really like lore heavy. You know. Uh, Last thing is like, when is the event? You know, make sure you include that. And then how? How will the event proceed from start to finish? How will participants know when the event has started and where to go? So this is just, again, it's a general guideline for you guys whenever you're considering doing an event. It's something to help you make the most out of the event that you can.
Can I just add
Some
something to that real quick?
Yes.
Walk through your event end to end. Like, imagine your event. How does it start? How do players get there? How do they know how to get there? How do they know where to go? How are they going to know what to do when they get there? It's kind of like getting in a car and driving it. How do I start the engine? How do I accelerate? What turns do I need to make? How do I slow the car down? And when is the ride over?
Exactly. One thing that like I'm not perfect. I've recently become a world builder, and I've been trying to throw out some more events and work on events. And some of them have gone great. Some of them have not gone so great. And one of the things, some of the best advice Moog has given me recently is to do dry runs. You know, just do a rehearsal of the event from start to finish, so that way you can hash out any little things that might come up. It's huge. All right, so to continue on, well, before I guess I go, does anyone want to add anything to that? I mean, I know it's kind of just a general guideline, but I want to give everyone the chance here. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. This kind of continues on with the event. So, event considerations. This is some things here. I'm piggybacking off of Moog. Uh, so, to that end, event directors. Every event should have a single director. This person is in charge of making sure all the actors hit their marks, that things are in place to successfully run the event, and that there's a delegation of task from anyone who is helping with the event. Again, event dry run slash dress rehearsal. Run through the event end to end. How is the event triggered? How do others know when the event has ended? What are all the beats you have to hit? What are the event mechanics, etc. What needs to be done? Then knowing your role. Events go sideways when there are too many cooks in the kitchen, aka, i.e., poor communication, too many people changing a particular thing or forgetting key event beats. All that has major impact. Um, One thing too, one example I'm going to give, and I'm not going to mention names, but I want to make a particular emphasis on too many people changing a particular thing. That's huge. Whenever you're doing an event with other people, if you want to change something, make sure you communicate that. Communication is key always, and especially for events. So if you change something, or if you want to make a change, make it known. Anyways, everyone participating in the event, much like an actor, should know their role, their lines, and their mark. Be a director, not a dictator, okay? Directors should encourage engagement from others, hearing ideas, and being open to feedback, and then discuss how and if an idea is feasible to implement practically, right? So be willing to hear others in, or hear others out on your idea for the event. If you have other people that are working with you, get feedback, whatnot. Don't just want everything your way and you're not going to accept it done any other way. Like that's just being a dictator. It's just kind of just feels bad, and you could be missing out on really valuable feedback that could actually enhance the moment. Anyways, those feeding the director ideas, do not force your ideas, even if you still feel it is a better one. Very important, right? If the director of the event denies your idea, don't take it personally. Don't get angry. Don't get mad. Just move on. Even if you feel it's better, even if you think it like no matter what, just move on. Voice it. Don't force it. Lastly, don't be afraid to ask staff for help. As I said before, staff love to see player engagement, and events are great opportunities to get more people involved. Just please keep your expectations of what us, the staff, can do within reason, okay? We're volunteers with lives of our own as well. Very important. Um, would anyone like to add to that?
There's a question up in the. Someone has their hand up in the chat.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Let's.
I'll invite them up.
Hi. My question is like, I started this season halfway through season 10, and I was texting the whole time. And since the start of this season, I wanted to text roleplay, but then adjusted to a voice, and it's kind of hard for me to stay in character without thinking out of character that the person will hate me or ignore me. Like, for an example, whenever I would interact with Mox in character, I would think like, am I annoying? Am I being too loud? Or am I just being irritable? Because I've been trying to avoid that a lot of times.
Okay. Well, a couple things I'll say to that. So first off, I will say good on you for trying to like keep it in your mind, like being mindful of that. A good rule of thumb, I would say, if you're feeling that way, is just ask. Like honestly, like if yeah, I don't think any of the staff are opposed to you asking OOC, hey, am I making you uncomfortable? Am I upsetting you in any way, or is this okay? Like just doing a reality check can be extremely helpful.
I feel
Yeah,
that
yeah, I do that like half the time because I wouldn't want to have any unnecessary hate or dislikement of me or like how I'm playing my character, and like it's been like very hard for me to stay in character while trying to worry about the person out of character, or like generally in a sense, like if there's something big going on, and then I ask one character, and then that'll break the whole group's serious moment, like shit like that.
My
That
recommendation is
actually,
always to, if you are using voice primarily, like if you're talking to people through microphone, I always go OOC through the /O command. I will never break
mm,
character using voice, because A, it's is jarring for people, and B, it creates a clear delineation or builds a clear line between those two like voices, right? So that could be a good strategy as well. Is anytime you want to go OOC, just do a quick /O or OC, and then bring up whatever it is you need to talk to with whoever that way, instead of having to say it out loud.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
Yeah,
great.
that does lead into something I did eventually want to bring up, but character check-ins. I had mentioned it briefly before. Character check-ins, I feel, are something that should be common practice, but if somebody's newer to role playing or doesn't necessarily have that thought process off the bat, you don't tend to think about it. Um, but if you have any interaction with a character, positive or negative, I feel, that is more than a couple of minutes, sometimes it's just good to do a check in. I will, again, only use myself as an example because I only have myself to go off of most of the time. Over the radio, over the 001, I know people have heard Ada and Grace and most of the Lost Boys constantly antagonizing each other. And I honestly felt really bad that I didn't check in with the player way sooner, because sometimes we say some pretty awful fucking shit. Pardon my language. But it's always important. You never know what a person is going through, and sometimes it's that little bit of extra good faith to check in and be like, hey, are we doing okay? Do we need to back up a step? Like, are you enjoying what's going on? It's always really good because it helps you grow as a player as well as a role player, I feel. And I have other instances that I could give examples on, but I don't want to take up too much time. But it's something that I feel should be often done that isn't, and I encourage it. Is all.
I mean, that's awesome. I'm probably gonna circle back to that once we get toward the end, because I really like that.
Yeah.
I like that whole concept. All right. I'm gonna push forward here because I know we're gonna have a lot to talk about with some of these next few slides. All right, moving on. More serious RP and how to balance serious and silly RP. All right, we've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of talk this season about this, and so I wanted to go into it just a bit. So, to some extent, if you guys want to see more serious RP, then you have to be the change you want to see. Sitting on the sidelines, calling out, complaining, and then waiting for something to happen doesn't amount to anything. You can do more to help get people engaged. You can have some fun and exercise your own RP chops beyond your comfort zone. If you want to see that serious RP, be that serious RP. There's nothing stopping you. We as staff, when we develop like our story like this season, there's nothing silly about our story this season, right? Like we, the staff are doing everything they can to encourage and provide serious RP. Uh, there's nothing stopping serious RP. You can absolutely do that. Now, of course, there are lines. Don't go breaking rules. Don't go doing something excessive or offensive just because you're trying to do some serious RP. You don't need to do that. Um, anyways, it's the apocalypse. One thing I want to talk on, yeah, it's apocalypse, and you can only achieve so much solo. You can seek out opportunities to make new friends and take on the world with them. It's a great way of encouraging serious RP is by finding like-minded people. Uh, moving on. Kodad, quote from him, which I really liked and I wanted to add in, was to create a character that can exist in any space, right? So consider a character that can exist in any space to some capacity. If they're a super serious type of character, still let them crack a smile on occasion. Uh, everyone still has a sense of humor. It doesn't have to be non-existent. All right. The root of this issue is honestly, again, in my personal opinion, it's on the community. It's not on the admins. It's not on the staff. They do plenty to draw up serious RP. The community has to come together and decide individually for themselves, how can I RP the change I want to see? What can I do that would bring more serious engagement? And one thing Moog had said that kind of stuck with me is that, the server and everything you see is a reflection of the community itself. So if you want to see serious RP, then be that, and you will attract other like-minded people. I can guarantee that there's no shortage of people that enjoy serious RP. There's plenty of people that do like it, that want to see more of it, that are open to it. You just have to just do it. I mean, honestly, that's all there is to it. There's nothing stopping you. Some exceptions to this is during particularly like serious events slash moments. If someone isn't taking a situation seriously, for example, there's like a funeral going on and a bunch of clowns roll up and honking. And I'm only using the clowns because we had clowns this season and it was a fun bit. But if they pull up to like a funeral, right, and they're just being goofball idiots, yeah, that's probably not appropriate for the situation, and you can give them some warnings that you might cause them harm if they don't get the hell out of there, right? If they don't start taking this seriously, that's okay. So, anyways, on the flip side of the coin, if all people want to see a silly RP stop, admins are extremely unlikely to make that a rule, right? Because again, there's a lot of reasons for that, but chief among them, I think personally, is player autonomy. We're not going to all of a sudden hold people back and tell them no, you can't do this. You're not allowed to act this way or to be this type of person. Like that's just not part.
Also, to level with you guys, the staff team only has so much time in the day, right? We only have so much stuff that we can do. We only have so many hours to play. And what you guys don't want us doing is policing RP or having to constantly make judgment calls on whether something is fair game or not. What we should be doing is working behind the scenes to keep the stories moving, keep the POIs getting built, coming up with cool ways to engage you, not necessarily being like RP police. And so it's really important to think like how do we, maximize the limited resources that we have to make the best experience possible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um,
Uh,
uh, something. This is sorry. A very quick note, harkening back to what Moog said earlier. Read the room. If you're playing a super and so serious character that generally doesn't crack a smile, but you're in an absolutely hilariously absurd situation, and you can't like let that character have a moment of levity, maybe it's best you disengage. But also on the same flip of the coin, if you're in a serious situation, even if that means some chaos is going on around you, sometimes the best thing to do is just as whoever's in that group possibly disengage from that area and move their conversation elsewhere to help preserve if you're trying to keep a serious note. That is part of your autonomy as a player is if you don't like where you are, move to a different spot. It's not it sometimes is it a little inconvenient, sure, but it doesn't stop you from having play.
it goes back to like being respectful, keeping things tasteful, and also again to what I said earlier. If you are only going to be like X type of way, uh, you might leave a bad taste in other players' mouths. People might not want to be around you anymore because of how you're acting. So it's no matter what end of the stick you might let on or whatever. Terrible phrasing, I know, but no matter what end you are on, it's important to just be respectful. Okay. I think Matthias made a great example, which is exactly kind of what Grace had just said. But he was saying, he was having a moment with about the florist's death, and he had people go that they don't think they can help him, and said they're sorry, and they left. And yeah, like Matthias says, that is super respectful. That's good. That's being good faith RPer. That's in good taste. That's fine. If you're like if you're a silly type of person, then excuse yourself from situations like that. That's fine. Go be silly somewhere else. And it's the same way the other way around. Like if you're the serious RPer and you're trying to force, seriousness on everybody else, that doesn't have a place here either. It's all again about reading the room and just whatever's happening in the moment. Um, yeah. Is there anyone that would like to raise their hand in the Discord and talk about that a little bit? Anyone have anything to add to it? Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, like Hadrada says, neither being silly or serious is bad at all. Just as Mox says, look at the situation you're in and recognize if this RP is something you can respectfully engage in, or if you need to disengage from the situation. It's perfect. Sums it up.
Can I touch on maybe a real world example real quick while you move on?
Please.
So I'm going to pick on a friend of mine. I don't think he's here to defend himself, but I think everyone knows good old Hardy Big. And sometimes, you can be in a situation where you have, and I'm not picking on Hardy specifically, but you can have a Hardy Big who runs into the room and it's like, I'm Hardy Big, ba 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 ba. That's a situation in which you need to deal with that stuff in character. If you find someone's coming into the room with the wrong energy, you would deal with it just like you would any other unstable individual. You would politely invite them to leave, and then you would escalate that particular invitation into a forceful removal one way or the other. So I challenge you guys, like I know it's sometimes not easy, but it is challenging and sometimes very fun to have to deal with those situations and work around them. So again, I'm not picking on my boy Hardy. I'm just using him as an example because I know that's come up in the past with some people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's perfect. And again, that can result in like more compelling RP. Uh Also, it does a lot more. Like you guys, essentially, that's like it's taking agency into your own hands rather than feeling like, oh, we have to rely on running to staff and let's go tell staff, let's go tell mommy and daddy and force mommy and daddy to deal with it. Like, no, again, like staff aren't here to police that stuff, okay? And you can handle that
Yeah,
through RP.
maybe just to add sort of a finer point to that too. This obviously does not apply to if someone is making anyone feel uncomfortable, if people are touching on topics that are like extremely uncomfortable, breaking rules, saying stuff that is completely off base or unhinged. That is a situation in which you guys 1000% should be reaching out to staff, letting us know, and letting us deal with it immediately. So if there's ever something that's happening that's like, okay, this person's saying some fucked up shit, then that is when you call us into police whatever's going on. But if it's just fair RP, it's nothing like over the line, deal with it in character.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on from that. We can circle back to that later at the end if folks want to touch on that more, but I'm going to start moving on. All right. Next fun topic is RP PvP. We saw a ton of feedback about this season as well. A lot of suggestions, a lot of discussion. So we're going to get into it. And I'm going to specifically talk about how to RP PvP in good faith. I'm going to get into bad faith PvP a bit, but I'm going to move with the assumption that we all want even though some don't, that we all do want to indeed RP PvP in good faith. So, with that being said, here's like some steps, a step-by-step guideline of how you could do that, because I'm sure there's plenty of people when I've seen a lot of people this season that have like, I want to RP PvP, but I simply don't know how to do it in a way that's going to be good, compelling, enjoyable for everyone. Well, here's a guideline for you. Okay. So, step one, initiation, right? Let your intended victim know that they are in a dangerous situation and need to comply with your demands or be met with a consequence, okay? There are many ways you can do this, preferably with text, because it's a lot harder to misinterpret or if you're doing it over voice, a lot of things can happen. Someone might not be able to hear you. A lot of things can happen with voice. So text is preferred. So personally, do it with text, I think. You don't have to do it with text, but it's recommended. Step two, acquire a reaction from the victim that confirms they understand, right? So that they're not just like, oh, this person, they just shot me out of nowhere, which we've had that this season. They're like, they weren't complying with someone's demands, someone warned them, and they just kept doing what they were doing, and then got killed, and then opened a KOS ticket. And it happens, I'm pretty sure it happens pretty often, but I can think of a few specific examples this season too. So acquire a reaction from the victim that confirms they understand. uh, there's some nuances to this that we'll get into, but I'm going to keep pushing. So ask them to perform some kind of action to acknowledge that they understand. It can be having them perform simple tasks such as nodding, putting their hands up, their thumbs up, or pushing it a little further, like RP that you've tied them up and now they need to sit down, etc. Be creative and do something that matches the energy of your character. Um, there's a lot you can do with this, right? This is where the real nitty gritty RP can come in. You know, when you're acquiring that reaction and you're going through the initiation and you're moving through this whole interaction and this whole experience, right? There's no limit to the imagination of how you can do this. There's not necessarily a right way to do it. There's not necessarily I mean there's wrong ways. But again, this is just a general guideline. But the most important thing is keep it natural, you know, keep it to your character, and just lastly, step three again, move through the interaction with patience. And as I go through, one thing I want a disclaimer before I move on. As I go through these RP PvP slides, because there's a few of them, I'm going to hold off until the very end of the RP PvP slides just to take questions and whatnot, because I want to get through it all first, and then we can go over all of the slides about RP PvP. Um, so, anyways, next slide. RP PvP. All right. Victims, perform reactions. Lean into it. See if you can talk your way out of it or perform some action that convinces your perpetrator to give up or empathize with you. Victims should also understand that if you try to talk down or give attitude to the antagonist, they may become more aggressive. You might result in some potential consequences. I wouldn't start popping off at the mouth of someone who has a gun to your head, right? Probably not good for your longevity. Antagonist. Part of being a good RP antagonist is giving the victim a chance to interact with the situation. Okay? Make it known that if your victim complies with demands, they won't die. Aggressors need to understand the motivation for why they are holding someone up as well. If it is because you are desperate for supplies, you need them to survive, then RP that. Like don't just and I don't by when I say RP that too, I mean really RP it. I don't mean just say one line of oh I need this, so I'm gonna take it. Like boo, lame, exactly what Simon just said. Act desperate. That's compelling RP. It's immersive. It gets you in the situation. Like I can't. Yes, exactly. Emotion matters. Thank you, Simon. Oh, I love that. Anyways, moving on. If all you want to do is to take from others while not risking anything yourself, I recommend you don't bother attempting PvP here on PARP. And the reason I say that is because it gets into bad faith PvP. It becomes a bad experience for everybody. Staff end up having to deal with a bunch of tickets. Like it's a shitty experience for everyone. Okay. Uh, Ultimately, good RP PvP can be a give and take battle of interaction, a fight of wills. Whose will is stronger? Think and react according to the situation. Always be willing to lose. Always keep in mind NVL, or non value of life. And lastly, always be recording. This is actually a part of our rule set now. If you are the antagonist, you need to be recording. Be mindful also that although killing someone, and I said this before, I'm going to say it again, that killing someone in a game to you means nothing. To your character, it should mean something because they live in the world. Okay, it's especially true for antagonists. You know, they shouldn't just be killing people willy nilly because they're a bad guy. Boring, boo, bad RP. Um, I know there's a lot I'm sure we all want to talk about here, but I've got one more slide, so let me get through it and we can circle back. I think one or two more slides. Bad RP PvP, right? Okay, it's rushed. It's minimal initiation and interaction. It's intending to kill the victim outright if you're robbing them. And by when I mean outright, I mean like before this interaction even started, you're going out with the intention to kill your victim. Like that's just bad faith RP PvP. Um, Only seeking to rob purely for someone's loot. Like again, bad faith RP PvP. If your character needs loot, express that. And I also would encourage you only take what you need. You know, you don't need to strip someone bare of everything they own just to get what you need. Okay. A couple of quotes here. One from Hardy Big. A lot of people focus too hard on win and miss out on some of the best experiences. And I have a story to go with that here in a moment. Trist, the constant low effort thefts and car robberies from the music nights I would host have directly led me into me playing more on other servers instead of PARP. I enjoy a good banditry, but having constant car thefts, gunfights when I'm DJing has been actually excessive. And I want to I want to explain something about that because the reason I included this quote is because of the playing more on other servers, right? So when you do bad faith RP PvP, yeah, to you maybe that feels good in the moment, but you're ruining the experience for everyone else. Okay, you're hurting others, you're hurting the server as a whole, and that's just lame. Like that's whack as hell to me. Like, boo, don't do that. Respect your server. You know, respect everyone that puts in all this hard work on the server, the staff, your fellow players. You know, do good faith RP PvP. Or another quote from Deke. A simple robbery is boring. I'd much rather have antagonistic RP with any other purpose than simply taking my bag because it's better than theirs or running my pockets because they are a bad guy and want more cash. It's a perfect example. Uh, Something I want to talk about with that is, uh, again, oh man, I'm like getting a little scatterbrained. There was a point I had on that and then I lost it.
Do you want me to say something really
Uh,
quickly and I'll come back to you?
yes, go ahead.
So I just want to address something that a Phoenix brought up, which is this, like, for example, step one, if you move, I'll shoot you. Step two, the victim runs away. Step three, unload with patient, unload the gun. If you're robbing someone and they try to run away from you, you don't need to kill them. This idea that you need to murder someone because they walk away from you, frankly, to me, is unhinged and insane. You can easily put one or two bullets into someone, and guess what? They can't run away from you anymore. They're wounded, they're hurt. And then you can walk up to them, patch them up, and say, if you try that again, I will put you in the ground. Makes for more interesting RP, reminds the person that maybe they should follow your instructions. Everyone is going to have a much better interaction from that. Someone running away does not give you the license to just shoot them in the back 20 times. And that's what I'll say about that.
No, that's fucking perfect. And I remembered the point I wanted to make, which is that although like you know we see a lot of throughout this season we've seen a lot of like rough and huffing and puffing over RP PvP. I guarantee you guys, you know, RP PvP can be really good, and whoever you're doing it to, whoever your victim is, probably wouldn't even mind it as long as it's compelling. Like I know so many RPers that is the case for them. Like they don't mind losing their shit, just make it good. Okay. Um, it kind of goes to what Moog just said too. Like you know you don't have to and just kill them. You know you can again lean into the interaction, make it compelling, make it much more interesting, do more. Um, Again, don't rush through it. Like that's again right here, bad RP PvP, right? Rushed. Like that's one of those things. All right. So uh, before I continue on, also I want to get into a little story because it's one I'm very passionate about. Um, sorry, I know that we're kind of like taking up a lot of time, and I want to be mindful of your guys' time, but I think this story really hits home. I think it's a good one. So, uh, and I've told it to a handful of folks. Sorry for the folks that are gonna have to hear it again. So this is a personal experience of mine, and it was back in season 6 of PARP. Very fun season, very beloved one for a lot of us. Um, my character, some of you guys might remember him, was Sean. I ran the Z11. Um, well, one day as Sean, I was at the staff, I believe it was staff run, dealership, and I was just getting some work done on my car when all of a sudden, like a whole group, I think it was like 4 or 6 people, rolled up in their cars and held me at gunpoint and demanded they kidnapped me, got me in their car, and were driving me off to somewhere, right? And I had no idea who these guys were. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I did not, but I acknowledged this goes to a lot of things, right? So living in the situation, okay? So me in the situation, I was like, okay, I didn't try to like gun and run my way out of it. There's 4 other people here. I'm not going to make it out of this if I try to pull my gun on these people. That's one of those non-value of life things, right? So I valued my life. I didn't pull my gun. I got in their car, and I just leaned into the interaction to see, okay, how can this go? You know, I can't get away right now, but maybe I'll be able to get away later. So, anyways, moving on. So they kidnap me. They take me to this really like I have to watch myself here because I can harp on this whole experience all day. It was amazing. Uh, they take me to this underground like base that they had going with this fucking what he was called the Rat King, and it was crazy. They put me in a cage, and I was like in prison there, and they had this like other guy who was imprisoned on the other side of the room next to me. So I was just imprisoned, and I had to sit there and wait for a long time for my allies on the server to come and rescue me. And it resulted in one of the coolest and most fun nights I've had, not only in PARP, and in Project Zomboid, but in gaming in general. Okay, it was so fucking cool, right? Like again, I leaned into this interaction. I didn't try to run. I didn't try to like get out of it. I just went with it, and look at what it resulted in, right? And that's what Hardy Big, uh, one of his things that he says, when you focus too hard on the win and you miss out on some of the best experiences, that's a perfect example of that. Okay, like and I won't go into too many details of the night because I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. And if I start, I won't stop. But it was amazing, very cool RP. I ended up escaping with my life. Very fun, very fun. Um, moving on. Okay, so this is my last slide for RP PvP, and then we can discuss it a bit. So, what do we mean when we say people focus too much on the win or winning? A telltale sign of a bad antagonist, bad faith player, or bad RP PvPer is one that only cares about loot or coming out of the encounter as the victor rather than the encounter itself. Some good examples is gear fear. If you're just afraid to lose your items and your gear, so rather than focusing on being in the encounter and being in the moment, your focus is on not losing your items, which it makes you result in all sorts of ways, like shooting first before any real P, or just being quick to fire. There's plenty of folks, some maybe in this room, some maybe not, that are very quick on the trigger finger. And I would love to see those people do more RP first. You don't always have to shoot first. You don't always have to be quick on the finger. Okay. Only another example is only looking to meet the bare minimum of requirements and laid out in the rules before shooting rather than performing actual RP. And we saw this season. I won't get into details and who's and whatnot. It doesn't matter. But if you're only looking to meet the bare minimum of the rules so that you don't get in trouble by staff to perform your PvP RP, that's not really RP, is it? Like you're just doing the bare minimum. Like you need to lean into that RP. Okay, you need to make it an experience, and it's not just to meet the like initiation and going through the steps or whatever. Uh, you need to just make it an experience. Okay, items, cars, and valuables are replaceable. Unique experiences are not. I can't express that enough. Again, with the story that I just gave is a perfect example, right? Like if I had just tried to escape the whole time, if I didn't let them capture me, if I didn't, do all this, I would have robbed myself of such a fantastic and memorable experience. So keep that in mind, okay? Focus on the RP, not on the stuff, not on the winning, okay? Focus on the experience. Okay, so before I get into the next slide, who wants to open this can of worms here and add to it, talk about it? Anyone would like to discuss it a little bit more?
While people come up with questions, I will just say that this is a big reason why we made the modifications to the PvP rules that we recently have, primarily putting the onus on the aggressors because we were getting an enormous amount of KOS tickets. Without video footage, it is very, very difficult for us to adjudicate a KOS on who is right, who is wrong. Many of these types of things involved VoIP, which is much harder for us to pull information on. And so if you are going to be a PvPer, if you are going to be an aggressor, if you're going to go agitate people, it is your responsibility to know what the rules are and to make sure that you are always recording your interactions. Whenever someone gives us footage, it's almost like nine times out of 10 extremely easy for us to look at, say, okay, we see what happened here, cool, this is where you could have done better, this is our advice for next time, have a nice day, right? It's really important that people make sure they're up to date on the latest rules because really PvP is more of a mechanic. It's something that should be elevating the RP, creating tension, that sort of thing. It shouldn't just be a means for, hey, what is the bare minimum that I can do in order to engage in gunfights with people?
Absolutely. And to further that point, see, some people might be thinking, well, damn, guys, that's a lot of work you're making me do to just do some PvP. Like, yeah, that's kind of the point. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like it's a high as it's been stated before. RP PvP is a high tier PvP RP mechanic. Okay, like not just anyone is necessarily going to be able to pull it off to the extent that does it justice. And that's not to discourage people from trying. You can absolutely try, but try in good faith. All right. Is there anything else we want to add on to this? I haven't been able to look at everyone's comments, so I apologize. I'm trying to read over a few right now.
I invite Mox back to the stage here.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. Don't bother reading my comment because I'm just gonna reiterate it here. Um, if the goal is interaction and the goal is not necessarily just blue goblining because we all know that we're capable of it. Um, if the honest goal is interaction, I honestly believe that we could also do a lot more with mediation. Not necessarily that a moderator has to be there, but again, using myself as an example, uh, I had something that I wanted to thematically happen with one of the other Lost Boy characters. And instead of relying on dice because we knew we wanted it to go a particular way, we both talked about it. It's not scripting to do so, but we had the okay, well, this is the major beats we want to happen. let's work together to make it so it's something we're both satisfied with. And we did. And he had a story element that he got to take away from it. I had a story element that my character had to take away from it. And everybody was happy, and it focused more on the what we were doing for the conflict and why it was happening. So it's something that I believe we could make better use of if all parties are in fact amicable to it. That was it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to kind of iterate what Keyboard Baby just said because I like it. RP and improv is similar. You can build a structure and still have the moments be organic. Absolutely. And that's why I'm trying to right now in this workshop give you guys the tools that you need to do some of that. Again, there's no perfect way to do these things, but what I'm providing here is just a general guideline to help you along the way. And you might mess up. That's okay. Try to get feedback. Try to figure out how you can do better next time. Again, I'm not trying to discourage folks from doing these things. I'm just trying to make sure you do it in the way that does it justice, without ruining the experience for everyone else, and just again to help you do it in good faith.
Yes. I think we keep beating this point on the head a little bit, but it is very important. Understand what your goal is if you're doing this. For example, I toyed around me and a couple of the people have toyed around with the idea of playing antagonist next season, and part of that is if we're playing antagonist, we want it to be a thing where you're constantly never sure what's going to happen if they're around. Not that you're afraid you're going to die, but you don't know. It's that constant on the edge of your seat fear that makes a good antagonist. You want them to always question what your motive is and what you're doing, not necessarily, oh, these people are here, they're going to roll up and murder a ton of people, because that's not fun. That's boring. It's what you're wanting to accomplish, and I think that a lot of people get lost on that point.
That was beautifully stated, actually. All right. Uh, all this kind of pertains to the next slide, and this next slide is the final slide, and then we can open the floor up for everyone. We can to talk openly and discuss more about various topics we've already talked about and whatnot. So, without further ado, last and final slide. And I'm actually very interested because this is more about feedback from you guys. I'm really just kind of curious to what everyone has to say because I think there was some compelling arguments and some compelling discussion that was had about this. So I'm looking to collect potential feedback from you guys here. All right, so a lot of feedback pertained to the new life rule and memory loss. A couple of quotes here. One from Luna. The main problem I personally have with robbery is that if it leads to a victim's death, there's no way to strike back at your robbers. You just have to take the loss and move on. Not only have you likely lost everything you had on you, but now there's no way to get it back without breaking the rules, and that just makes it sting even more. Um, perfect, a lot of things to take away from this quote, right? So again, it goes back to you don't need to take everything from somebody. um, and it wouldn't a couple of things really, like it stung for this person, right? It stung enough for them to write this down, and it's memorable for them. It was a bad experience. It probably would not have stung so much for them if the experience was compelling. Okay, that's again where it goes back to RP PvP is a high tier mechanic and shouldn't be executed willy nilly. All right. This one from Grace here. Funny enough, the understanding that everything you've spent time maintaining, earning, is being ripped from you, all while you either don't have the ability to get it back. All right. Um, there's something I'm forgetting. I need to jog my memory a little bit, but there's something I wanted to go into a little bit with this, and it's what was it? It was that. Oh yes, okay. One of the biggest reasons for the new life rule, at least from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, my fellow staff and Moog, uh, is to stop revenge killings. Okay, because again, a lot of bad faith PvRP out there, a lot of bad faith PvP. a lot of folks taking it personally, and it was just resulting in revenge killing, revenge, revenge, revenge. Right? I think revenge can be a compelling RP, but if half the time it's going to be emotional, and if you cannot separate that emotion from yourself and your character, it's it's probably not going to go well. It's not going to be compelling. It's not going to be good RP, and it's probably what ended up resulting in this rule becoming a thing in the first place.
Yeah, so
Um,
I'll speak to
Go
that
ahead.
just real quick. Absolutely, it's there to stop the needless cycle of revenge. It's also there to enforce a little bit of realism that when someone gets knocked out, that there would be some kind of a trauma that would prevent them necessarily from remembering everything leading up to that moment. Um, oh, I just had a Shakur moment where I was going to say something and I totally forgot what it was, and it was about the new life rule. Oh, if you are going to be like an antagonist, if you're and this can be with individual PvP, or this can be with like a conflict between two groups, right? Constant back and forth with no end game in sight, bad. Like low to me, that's the low effort, low tier, just constantly trading barbs back and forth. If you're going to create a conflict or have an end game baked into your conflict. Have a put a stake in the ground and say, once we cross this point, the conflict is over. If people were capable of doing that with revenge, where it says, okay, well, once I execute action X, then the revenge arc is over, that's something that would be more agreeable and like something that we could work with. But unfortunately, that rule is in there to stop the needless sort of feedback loop that creates revenge. Well, you killed me, then I killed you. Well, I killed you for killing me, then I killed you for killing me for killing you.
Now, to that end, I do believe if players are willing to open a dialogue with each other, even out of character, to work on things in character, I think that would be really fun. Let's say it started out as an accident, a misfire happens. So now character A has some serious beef with character B. That would be a really fun storyline to then explore. But again, it does hinge upon if both players are in fact willing to let this stay in character and not let it become a festering wound out of character. Because I would love to see some interactions like that, honestly, wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
I think that builds wonderful story.
yeah. Another thing you got to remember, guys, is that you're playing to a very wide audience. It's about knowing your audience, and some audiences are not interested in coordinating their RP. Some people are purist, like improv style kind of, I do everything by the seat of my pants and I'm not planning anything, and that's fine, and that can work. But just know your audience, know the actors on the stage, and like adjust your style to that audience. So if you're working with people who are more silly, more spontaneous, then however you approach the situation should be geared towards spontaneity versus people who like to have really well planned out, thought out things where it's like, hey, let's get together, let's set the stage, and then let's play our parts.
Oh, one thing I'm going to add in too is part of the reason, okay, I added this slide in was one of the feedbacks I saw, which I thought was really good, is that I understand that this rule, the new life rule, is a bummer, but it is a necessity. But I understand it's a bummer for some folks because they feel like bad faith, our peers and our PvPers abuse it so that they don't have to face those repercussions in character. Like, yeah, that's a bad faith RP, low quality PvPer, right? So that's like the best advice I can give when you're dealing with someone like that who's like, okay, I'm only out to kill because I want them to forget that this ever happened because I don't want to face the repercussions. If you're dealing with somebody like that, that's a perfect example of do your best of like trying to stay away from that person. No, like that person has left a sour taste in your mouth. You don't want to be around them. It's one of those things. Like they kind of ostracize themselves out of the room when they do things like that. And again, it goes back to the server is a reflection of the community itself, right? That's perfectly encapsulated in this rule. If there wasn't so many like revenge issues or anything like that, this wouldn't have had to become a rule. So
Yeah.
everyone can take a note of how to do things in good faith. Okay, it's like that's where the best experiences are gonna come from. That's how we're gonna get the most bang for our buck in terms of our RP and just our general experience that we have. You know, you need to do things in good faith.
Yeah, and another thing too is we have the new rules that we've implemented around RP PvP is we've made it very like in the past. Obviously, there are consequences for if people break the rules and if they're serial rule breakers. However, we've never really codified those consequences. They've been kind of vibes based, which sure works, but it does not give a clear picture to the player. If you do this, this will happen. And that's a big reason why we put in those updated rules. That is to say, hey, like your first offense, this happens. It's a slap on the wrist. Second offense, more than a slap on the wrist. Third and fourth, well, you're not going to be playing on the server for the season potentially if you keep violating the rules. So part of the reason why we did that is to give people like a clear understanding of here are the expectations, here are the consequences, and hopefully that will help us. It gives people a barometer to measure how we are doing or how many infractions can I rack up before I really get into trouble. And it's not about it's really not about punishment. It's about ensuring that everyone is on the server having a good time, that everyone gets a chance to gain something from the interaction, even if they're on the quote unquote losing side of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whew. Well, we went through a lot of stuff. So I'm going to kind of open the floor up. And if anyone wants to talk on anything we've discussed on previously or things that we just talked on, please raise your hand, add in your 2 cents. Is there anything anyone would like to say? Anything anyone wants to talk about or go into a little more deeply? Because if there's nothing, I do have one last thing I'll go into, but I'm going to wait to see if anyone else have anything else that they want to talk about in regards to RP and RP PvP and all that good stuff. Okay, doesn't look like
Well,
it.
there's some people typing. Just give them a sec here.
Oh, I see people. Whoops. I was looking for hands. Whoops.
Maybe while we wait for people to type, one thing too is just remember, guys, that there is also, if you're not comfortable necessarily talking in front of a large audience, or you don't want to raise a point right now, you can always make like suggestions in the suggestions thread. We're absolutely willing to entertain all kinds of conversations and have spirited debate. All that being said, too, it's really important that everyone's like super respectful of those debates. We don't shut people's ideas down. We attack the idea, not the person, and we have like a good sort of thought out conversation about why something is a good idea, why might it work out, what is your experience that leads you to believe maybe the way you do about a particular issue. And often that you'll find that despite you might have some disagreements on stuff, you'll have a lot more common ground than you think. So
Hmm.
keep using those suggestion threads to come up with ideas. Again, we can't do everything. Some people, might have ideas that are great, but they're mechanically just not something that can be implemented because of either, the way Project Zomboid is, or the way our server is configured, or there's a variety of reasons why we don't do things. Another thing to take into consideration is the people who are on the staff team have a significant amount of cumulative experience. Now, that isn't to say that we know everything and we're always right. We make mistakes. I often will cop to when I make a mistake on something. But there, when we have a way of doing things, there is often a very good reason why that way exists, because we've dealt with these things for years. We've dealt with, hundreds, if not potentially thousands, of different types of appeal tickets and whatnot. And through that cumulative experience, we've come up with a way of trying to wash out a situation. But anyway, now that some of the questions are in, I'll let Chilled address that.
See one from Bill. He says, I'd say robbery is best done when it's only for specific items, rather than going for the grab bag. Though that doesn't really work when someone feels like they just want something they felt looks cool. Yep, uh, very true. It kind of goes back into good faith versus bad faith RP and RP PvP, right? So, good faith RP PvP is you're taking things from someone for a very specific reason. You know why that reason is, and you've conveyed what that reason is. Bad faith RP PvP is just taking shit because you want shit. See cool thing, take cool thing. Blame, boo, boring, whack. Okay, I mean, I'm not opposed to that type of RP if you can make it compelling. I'm not saying that's impossible to make it compelling. I do think it's going to be extremely difficult if that's your only goal. But maybe you can figure out the way. I don't know, but yeah, that's like bad faith versus good faith RP PvP. Okay, Floyd just said. Also, one thing I feel that people need to remember is that even though we have RP PvP between groups, that it shouldn't be kill on sight. It's really memorable when you have some antagonistic talks, but no shots fire. It helps build the story as well as let others learn some background slash what is happening. It's always more interesting including others. Yes, absolutely. I love that. I love that. It kind of goes back to one of the notes I had, which is, allowing victims the chance to interact, right? And it's especially difficult, I will say, when it's between groups, right? Because mob mentality sets in, and everyone's kind of like on edge, and tensions are high, and adrenaline is pumping. But again, don't be the first person to shoot, and you might find that no one shoots. Okay, I
Yeah.
think that's like best advice I could give there.
Another thing I'll say to you guys is showing people respect goes a long way, especially when you're working with another faction or another group on having some fun antagonism. I'll give you an example. Back in season 8, when I was part of the UHF, we had this constant back and forth with Rogers and his factory folk, and we would have these awesome epic PvP paddles where those guys would roll up, they would start shooting. We'd gun down a bunch of them. Maybe sometimes we all died. Maybe sometimes they died. But do you know what we didn't do? We didn't steal all their shit. We left all their bodies on the ground. We didn't touch stuff. And we were like, hey, someone's going to come by and pick up their stuff. That's for them to get. And a lot of the times that removes that equation of gear fear when you have a sort of a back channel, mutual non-aggression pact, at least when it comes to looting stuff. You'll find people are much more amicable to going in and having an all-out gunfight if you can agree to some terms. It's like, hey, if things go down, let's just leave people's stuff on the ground and let them come back in 30 minutes and get their shit.
Yeah. One thing real quick I want to go into that I forgot to go into before, and I think there were a couple people that joined during this that didn't get to see this part of the slide, so I kind of like going back to it actually. Um, but it goes back to embracing your inner storyteller, okay? Because I want to tell a specific story about this when it comes to developing, your character or developing a faction and developing like a compelling like theme or just RP for them, I want to cite one group in particular, which plenty of us know, goes back to season 6, and it's the Garden of Bones. All right, yep. All everyone who was there knows exactly what I'm talking about because these guys were cool as hell. Their RP was top tier level. I still have trauma from them, and so to go into it a little bit, very cool RP. So the Garden of Bones, for those that don't know, was a group of like, how do I say?
Forest dwellers.
Yeah, forest dwellers. Yeah, that's what that's a good word for them. They had values. Their values was life and like nature in general, and so what they would do is some good examples of how they made like compelling interactions with this theme. Very simple theme, right? Okay, we like nature. We dwell in the forest, right? So how they brought this to life, one particular experience I remember uh, was that they did not like people just free chopping trees willy nilly, right? Like if you just completely deforested an area, you had the Garden of Bones on your ass. Like you pissed them off royally. And when I was running Z11 back in season 6, I pissed them off royally when I built Z11 because I completely deforested the area, and after that, they were looking for the owner, which was me, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Like it resulted in some pretty cool RP with them. I was scared for my life. I actively tried to stay away from them because I'm like, "Oh fuck, they're gonna be after me." Uh, they also encouraged like, they acknowledged, okay, people still need to get their wood, right? So what they did is they encouraged people to quote unquote chop trees in a way that promotes tree growth or root growth is what they called it. And, and so what that meant was they encouraged people to chop trees in a way that wasn't like deforesting the whole area. You would just chop trees that are like really close together. So you still left an area with trees, but if they were like extremely close to one another, you would get rid of those. Uh,
You'd thin them
and
out.
that was Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thin out the area a little bit. You wouldn't deforest it completely, just thin it out. And so that's what I started doing back then. I was like, and it was funny when I started this season because I was still had that ingrained in my brain to chop trees that way. So when I went collecting wood, I would chop that way. It was actually really fucking funny. And again, that's one of those things. It's one of those things, guys, that's like, holy fuck, this was such good, compelling RP that it left a mark on me. It left me with this experience and whatnot that I remember to this day. It's a core memory. Super cool. And like it was such a small, subtle thing, but it was so cool. These guys were really top tier. Another example I'll use with them is one Moog told me about of his experience. I won't rob you of the tale, Moog, if you want to go into it, but it was the one where you talked about when you happened on them with, I think it was like a wood axe or something.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
literally walked into the Garden of Bones with a wood axe on my back, and they like it was like I walked into a vampire's den with a cross on my chest. They're all like get that awful implement like out of our face. Like that is sacrilege. Like why are you coming in here with an axe? Another thing too is like the cool thing about, and this isn't just going to turn into like a, we're not trying to glaze the Garden of Bones here, but Shakur or like Chill talked earlier a little bit about the idea of like having mystery, like having a group come in the room and you never really knew what they were going to do. The Garden of Bones were that group. When you saw them we had a huge community meeting once, and you saw them there, and it was kind of like that classic, like everyone's murmuring about like, oh shit, like the Garden of Bones, like what's gonna happen? Like, is shit gonna get crazy? Are these people gonna like murder us all? Why are they here? What are they gonna do? So building mystery and intrigue around you and your crew can lead to a lot of good RP. just by virtue of walking in the room, because you've done an excellent job of world building and sort of setting up your motivations and the type of and the way that you conduct yourself when you're around other players. So it's a phenomenal example of just like, yeah, Garden of Bones is like god tier RP.
Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Very fucking cool. Anywho, to go back over some of the things that have been talked about since. Let's see. Nora says a general rule we go by, and I assume by we you mean you and your husband, Nora. I don't know. Is if you attack us. Okay, she says yes. Okay, so general rule her and her husband go by is if you attack us and we win, we'll take what we want. If we attack you and win, we only take what we were asking for. If we take anything at all. Interesting little tidbit there. Um, Floyd says big difference between sending a message and then being a loot goblin. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Samuel says a good example for PvP ish is that you hold someone at gunpoint and an old lady takes your shoes and makes you walk on glass in order for her or the group to trust you, but won't return the shoes or gun. I'm pretty sure that's in reference to Rosemary. I think. I think she did that. I don't remember. Rosemary is fucking phenomenal. I love Rosemary. Yeah, it's good stuff. Um, Nora says, "Oh, she was saying in response to be interesting to make a character plot line in response to I'm sad I can't be extra gremlin. I would take specifically everyone's left shoe. Anywho, last thing I want to talk on is, and I almost like was debating bringing this up at all because it's like an extremely nuanced mechanic and probably not good for PvP, and it really relies on good faith actors. So I really actually would only recommend doing this at all, or even considering it, if you're role playing with someone who you know is a good faith RPer. Uh, but and fellow staff and Moog, feel free to like shut me down if you guys think this is like, nah, dog, like don't even touch on that. But it is. let me I fucking blackened it on my document because I was like, don't even bother. But I'm gonna unblacken it. I'm gonna talk about it. All right, so it is rolling dice for RP. All right, so this is extremely nuanced. I'm gonna talk about it a little bit, and it's what I wrote down is like because I had mentioned earlier, right? Is perform having your if you're the antagonist of a RP PvP situation. One of the things you could get your victim, to do was, tie them up and have them sit down. Well, a cool way for the victim to interact is like the victim tries to roll a dice, and based on the roll, they either like cut the rope if they have like a knife in their inventory, or they're able to untie the rope or like shake themselves loose. Like that could be some really cool RP. But here's the thing: when it comes to rolling dice for RP, you need to keep it authentic. You need to always value your life, and you need to let in my personal opinion, you need to state why you're rolling the dice, what you're rolling the dice for, and whatnot before you roll the dice. Uh, and if so, it might also be good to establish some like ground rules, right? Like if like a 1 to 11, maybe that results in a you lost the dice roll. 12 plus could mean you successfully succeeded, whatever action you're trying to perform. That stuff you probably need to state or talk about with the person you're RPing with. So dice for RP, it's a cool idea. I think it can work. It has to only be, I really think it only works if both participants are good faith RPers and you've had some discussion with them and you go from there. But it could result in some really cool stuff. Again, that battle of interaction, the battle of wills, right? That RP PvP can be, that can factor into that. Um, Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's any. Let's see. Some of this. There's already some topic. Oh, one other thing. I'm gonna go into. Sorry, I think we're like 2 hours in now. So I'm gonna try and like speed this up because I want to respect everyone's time. But um, I wanted to talk about this and I forgot to make a slide out of it. But one thing I want to talk more about is encouraging folks. If you have a story in mind or you have a story you want to build and it requires a little extra oomph, right? you know, really truly engage your fellow community. Ask other players, get feedback, ask the staff, cut us an RP ticket. We have plenty of people that do that currently, but I think plenty more could. And it's because I've seen a lot of players out there, especially here in this room, in this audience, that you guys do great RP, but I think you maybe need a little like if you had more tools at your disposal, you could kick it up a notch. Ask us for those tools. One good example. Now I'm gonna go on a little bit of a story, and this was a pitch I threw in at the very early into the season. Um, and it didn't end up happening, which is another thing I'll go into. And real quick, I'll say it did not happen because the person I wanted to interact with decided this was not the route for their character, and I respected that. Extremely important. Okay, but it was a pitch that I was to one of the staff members because I know we all have fond memories of Shady Terry's. Okay, I had pitched to the staff member who ran Shady Terry's. This whole storyline that it was like a little subplot that I was going to do with Shady Terry of uh, like because of my character Shakur, he was an up and coming business owner, very humble man, respected, classic genuine values of hard working and straightforwardness and all that. And Shady Terry was like it was like his like entrepreneurial villain, right? He was like he was the antithesis of what Shakur stood for, and Shakur could just not live in the same town as this shady son of a bitch, right? So I come up with this plot line with that I was going to start being more outspoken against Shady Terry's and whatnot. And I had started laying the groundwork when early into the season when Moog was doing the scoop, and I would get on the scoop and I would be like, man, Shady Terry sucks. So I'd start bad mouthing Shady Terry's and everything. And so the plot line was going to go like this. And this is just to give you guys an ideas of the level of which you guys can do things when you ask questions, when you try to engage. I think it would have been really cool to see it happen. But my pitch was that Shakur was gonna raise all this grief with Shady Terry, whatnot, and Shady Terry, although Shady Terry's character, if you read any of his biographies, he was not the man to get his hands dirty. He had other people do that for him. But I was going to try and raise enough of a stink where Shady Terry had no other option but to get his hands dirty and to like kill Shakur or be brought to justice by Shakur. So I had pitched like let's do this whole event where like we have this gunfight between Shakur and his allies that he has met, and the staff and Shady Terry. And depending on who won that gunfight, uh, if Shady Terry won the gunfight and him, he would drag Shakur onto the scoop and execute Shakur live on air to make an example out of him. Uh, if Shakur and his allies won, it would like go the opposite way. Uh, then I had this other bit. Well, if Shady Terry did win and like drag Shakur onto the scoop, whatnot, then I was going to bring in another character I had from my biography, which was Shakur's wife, and she was going to come back as this like vengeful uh, widow and whatnot, and trying to again bring Shady Terry to justice and uh, try to take him onto the scoop and be like and chastise the county for not being able to do what an old woman had the balls to do. It was a very cool little compelling story, right? Um, sorry, I'm rambling on. I'm like, oh, look, guys, I'm such a good storyteller, huh? No, I'm sorry, that's not what I mean to be. My point I'm trying to get at here is that you can come up with these grandiose ideas. Uh, you just need to discuss it first. Like I said, it did not end up happening because the staff member who played Shady Terry was like, I just, that's just not my character. He's like, he was very respectful about it. He was like, I love the idea, but it's just not him. And I was like, okay, I respected that. Yeah, I put work into this story. Yeah, it was a bummer not to see it happen, but I didn't take it personally, and that's something that's very important. Whenever you guys are suggesting events or stories of this, if you're going to suggest stories of this magnitude, you need to be able to handle being told no. Okay, like we're going to do everything in our power to make it feasible for you guys, but sometimes it just might not happen. You know, it's just the nature of things. But anyways, yeah, I just wanted to go on that tangent because I would love to see more people engage in that level of storytelling and just world building in general and reacting to the situation that they're in, right? Again, like uh, Shay Terry was the antithesis to Shakur, so Shakur just couldn't let that slide. He couldn't have this guy in the town, so it was cool. Anyways, uh, sorry to ramble on so long about that. Uh, Side note, one thing I want to also throw out is the allies of Shakur would have been like I was planning on, and I'm saying this because again I want you guys, if you're going to do these storylines, I encourage you to engage the player base. Don't make it just a solo personal storyline. Like, yeah, that's fine, that's cool, that's good for you, but you gotta involve the community. And so one of like when I one of the things I was going to do that in that particular storyline was like, okay, Shakur has had dealings with people in his shop that he has become fond of. So like I was gonna ask like Jay Shear to come help me bring Shady Terry to justice. I was gonna ask like a couple of people. I think it was gonna be like Nora and Zane. Uh, I know I was gonna ask Beef Jetski. Hey brother, come help me. We can't let this stand. All the people I had good standings with and could trust. I was gonna round them up, get them together, and encourage them to help me out in this taken. So that's one thing I want you guys to like think about and consider of how do I engage other players as in the story. All right, well, I've been talking for a long time. My throat is hoarse. Let's see, I'm gonna say a couple more things on. I'm just going to say or read some of this feedback people are saying, and then I am probably all wrapped up if there's nothing else. But some of the feedback that people are saying is A Phoenix / Kelsey, put the community first and then take action. Yeah, I love that. I love that sentiment. Bill says there are definitely things that are best kept to a select number of characters. Too many cooks can happen really quickly. Yes, absolutely. Um, that's the other thing. If you want to bring other people on to your idea, like if like the one I had, for example, I had a clear goal in mind of what I wanted to do and clear roles defined for the people that would have been brought into it. All I needed them to help me with this gunfight, right? Like it was simple, straight to the point. There's no real confusion. There's a moral and narrative backing to it, and it would have been pretty cool. But anyways, yes, absolutely. Like Floyd just said, also in stories, it's perfectly okay to be a side/support character. Everyone has their time to be a star. Yeah, absolutely. I personally, if someone else came up to me and was like, "Hey, man, I need your help uh, taking on this like undertaking or whatever, and whatever this issue is that I have. I need your help in that." Uh, I'd find that fucking cool as hell. Like I said before, in like the AMA. You know, I love seeing your guys' creativity. It's one of the reasons I have stayed on the server, why I came back to the server, why I wanted to be on the staff is because this server part it's inspiring, man. Like when you see people's creativity going and come up with these stories and these characters and even all the other little things that come from it, like Matthias's art and other people's art and their creativity. Jack Dusk is his like recordings that he does on the news. It's cool as fuck. It's so cool to see. I really love seeing that spark of creativity. It's again, it's inspiring. So again, that's why I do these things or say these things about embracing your inner storyteller and all that. I really want to inspire you guys and encourage you guys to amp it up to that next level, you know, because I know you guys are capable of it. I've seen it. It's so cool to see. It's so exciting. Uh, it's why I'm here. Anywho, uh, I'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If anyone else has anything else to say, go ahead. But I think that's about it from me.
Only thing I'm going to say is thank you, Chilled Cone, for not just putting this together, but knocking it out of the park. It was very, very informative. You obviously put like a ton of time and effort into bringing folks together, and I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to listen to you talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for helping. Also,
Oh, we got one more person who wants to come up and speak. Last one.
I just want to throw my 2 cents out there, and like my feedback and everything is like it has definitely helped me calm down a bit about the whole OOC thing, and that like actually gave me a few ideas I was doing with some people of either trying to kill my character or trying to make my character look like a bad person before he gets executed or die from a disease before anyone else could do anything. Which, yeah. But yeah, this like really helped me try to help process my mind, make more ideas and make it more liveful and tasteful RP.
awesome, man.
Great
Love
idea.
that.
And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again for that.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem. Thanks for saying that. Well, kick ass, guys. Thank you all for joining, for listening to me ramble for 2 hours now. I know it's hard because of my voice is like crazy monotone. I fall asleep to it sometimes as well. So amazing that you have all been able to withstand that. Thanks, guys.
Great job, dude. Thanks for everyone for showing up. Appreciate it.